Is bestie first on the news. Finally, the Sky found someone to
expect the Chicago Sky to pull the trigger on that deal, but they
one of the WNBA's most explosive young stars just got traded, and the real story is not the move itself, but what it exposes behind closed doors about a franchise that could not hold things together.
Into this breaking news, the Chicago Sky are trading two-time All-Star Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream. In return, Chicago gets 2 first-round draft picks. Reese averaged nearly 15 points and 13 rebounds in her first.
The moment Angel Reese was traded from the Chicago Sky to the Atlanta Dream, the reaction was immediate and filled with questions that went far beyond basketball strategy. This was a player who had already built a reputation as one of the most impactful and polarizing figures in the league, and her sudden exit signaled that something deeper had gone wrong inside Chicago's system. The return package, 2 future first-round picks in 2027 and 2028, along with a second-round swap, might look respectable on paper, but when placed against the value of a 2-time All-Star still on a cost-controlled contract, it raises a far more uncomfortable question about what the Sky were really trying to fix or escape.
5 first-round picks over the next 3 years. Okay. And the Sky call this a big opportunity for both Reese and the team. The WNBA season begins next month.
This was not a quiet departure or a mutual parting that developed naturally over time, because the warning signs had already been there, building tension slowly before erupting into something that could no longer be contained. Late in the previous season, Angel Reese publicly criticized the front office and questioned the quality of the roster, a moment that immediately shifted the narrative from on-court performance to internal conflict. The response was swift and telling, as the organization suspended her for half a game, a decision that only intensified speculation about the relationship between player and management. What followed made the situation even more complicated, because after serving the suspension, Reese did not return to finish the season, instead being listed out with a back injury, a development that left fans and analysts questioning whether the issue was purely physical or something far more layered. By the time she spoke in December about being under contract and committed to building a relationship with head coach Tyler Marsh, the damage already felt significant, and while the words suggested stability, the reality behind the scenes appeared far less certain.
It was traded to the Atlanta Dream. The news broke yesterday. Shout out to Taylor Rooks for being first with the news that Angel Reese is being traded. Christina, when I saw that news, I was...
The collapse of Chicago's season cannot be separated from this situation, because the team entered the year with ambitious plans that quickly unraveled in dramatic fashion. The front office made aggressive moves, including bringing back Courtney Vandersloot and acquiring Ariel Atkins, signaling a clear intent to compete immediately rather than rebuild slowly. But almost everything that could go wrong did go wrong, starting with Vandersloot suffering an ACL tear in June, a devastating blow that removed a key leader and disrupted the team's structure. Even before that injury, the roster had already shown signs of dysfunction, as chemistry issues and inconsistent performances began to surface, exposing flaws in the team's construction. The decision to trade Marina Mabrey for a future draft asset added another layer of complexity, because while it may have been intended as a long-term move, it weakened the team's immediate scoring ability and contributed to a season that quickly spiraled out of control. Despite all of this, Angel Reese continued to produce at a high level, improving across multiple statistical categories while still leading the league in rebounds per game. A reminder that her individual performance remained elite even as the team struggled around her. Her rookie season had already set the tone, highlighted by a record-breaking streak of 15 consecutive double-doubles and the highest rebounding total in a single season, achievements that positioned her as a cornerstone player rather than a replaceable piece. That is what makes this trade feel so jarring, because players with that level of impact are not typically moved unless the situation becomes untenable, and that is exactly what this appears to have become. The Sky's decision suggests that keeping Reese was no longer seen as a viable option, whether due to internal conflict, long-term vision, or a combination of both, and that realization carries serious implications for how the organization is perceived moving forward. Well, from Atlanta's perspective, however, the move is being framed as a clear and calculated win, with general manager Dan Padover openly describing Reese as a perfect fit for what the team is building. That statement is not just promotional language, it reflects a belief that her competitiveness, production, and intensity align with the identity the Dream are trying to establish. Head coach Carl Smesko reinforced that vision by emphasizing her two-way impact and how her energy and instincts will translate into their system. But even within that optimism, there are are questions that cannot be ignored, particularly when it comes to fit, because Atlanta has prioritized spacing and perimeter shooting, while Reese's game has been built primarily around interior dominance, rebounding, and physicality. The idea that the Dream have successfully developed non-shooters into perimeter threats, as seen with players like Naz Hillman, suggests that they believe they can expand Reese's skill set, but that transformation is far from guaranteed and will require significant adjustment from both player and system. There is also a broader roster puzzle at play, because integrating Reese alongside key players like Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray will demand careful balance, particularly as the team considers future decisions involving frontcourt players such as Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner. This is not just about adding talent, it is about reshaping identity, and that process carries both opportunity and risk. Financially, the move is undeniably appealing for Atlanta, because Reese remains on a relatively low salary compared to league averages, and giving the Dream flexibility to retain other core players while still adding a high-impact talent. That combination of value and upside is rare, and it is one of the reasons why the deal is being viewed as a potential turning point for the franchise. For Chicago, however, the aftermath is far more complicated, because this trade closes the chapter on a player who was expected to define the team's future, and it does so in a way that raises serious concerns about stability and direction. General Manager Jeff Pagliacca acknowledged Reese's contributions and impact, but the decision to move on suggests that the relationship had reached a point where continuation was no longer practical. The return of 2 future first-round picks offers some long-term hope, but it also comes with uncertainty. Particularly if those picks fall late in the draft due to Atlanta's potential success. In contrast, the loss of a proven all-star creates an immediate void that cannot be easily filled, placing additional pressure on players like Camila Cardozo to step into a larger role as the team attempts to rebuild its identity. The situation becomes even more intense when considering the broader pattern, because this is not the first time the Sky have lost a key player under difficult circumstances, and each departure adds to a growing narrative about player experience within the organization. That narrative does not stay contained within the locker room. It spreads across the league, influencing how players, agents, and future prospects view the franchise. What makes this entire situation feel so explosive is the contrast between potential and outcome, because on paper, the combination of Reese's talent and Chicago's offseason moves should have positioned the team as a serious contender, yet the reality unfolded in the opposite direction, with injuries, chemistry issues, and internal conflict combining to create a season that fell apart faster than anyone expected. Now, both teams move forward, but in very different positions, with Atlanta embracing the arrival of a star who could elevate their ceiling, while Chicago faces the challenge of redefining itself after losing one of its most valuable assets. The trade does not just shift talent, it shifts pressure, expectations, and narratives, setting the stage for a new chapter that will be closely watched from every angle, because in the end, this was never just about basketball, it was about control, chemistry, and the difficult reality that even the most talented players cannot thrive in the wrong environment, and when that environment breaks down, the consequences are impossible to hide. So if a team is willing to trade a player like Angel Reese this early, what does that say about what was really happening behind the scenes? Let us know your views in the comments below.